The Energy Balance Approach, written and introduced by Elaine Wilson.
Well, thank you very much for giving me your attention to talk to you about the Energy Balance Approach, which is a book that I've written. It's been in production for a long, long time, about 7 years now, and I've finally gotten around to self-publishing this on my website. And I believe you've all got a card for how to get to the website to see this. Even if you're not interested in buying this book, please visit the website. I blog, I give out free newsletters, you can subscribe, get lots of information totally free of charge about nutrition and health and weight loss. So, who am I and what am I doing here to be able to talk to you about this? Well, my name's Elaine Wilson. I'm an acupuncturist and I've been working in York now for 10 years. And I don't know how many of you know very much about acupuncture, but it isn't just about sticking needles in. Acupuncture is actually an umbrella term, and it encompasses several different aspects of Chinese medicine, including Chinese dietary therapy. And it was through my own experience, actually, even before I became an acupuncturist, that I had to use this kind of diet for health. And it really worked for me. So I was absolutely fascinated when I became an acupuncturist to find that this was Chinese dietary therapy, because it hadn't been put to me like that when I was actually using these diet techniques for my own health. And then that really sparked an interest. So whilst I'm an acupuncturist, lots of my patients go away with some dietary advice based on Chinese dietary therapy. And that really led me much further down the nutrition path. So I'm also a fully qualified nutritional therapist in the Western sense. And so this is really a fusion of those two things, bringing together what I think is the most effective balance between Chinese therapy and nutritional therapy for health and weight management. It's really important to understand that in Chinese dietary therapy, there's a very different view to what constitutes good and bad foods. Basically, in Chinese dietary therapy, no foods at all are inherently good or bad. They're only either appropriate or inappropriate for your own energetic needs. So this really fits in with my belief that there is no diet that suits more than one person from one day to the next, because our own energies fluctuate from one day to the next, and our needs, therefore, for nutrition fluctuate from one day to the next. And this is when we're talking about just general health. So it's really important to begin to understand our own energetic profile, and then to understand the energetic profiles of foods so that you can make appropriate food selections and choices according to your needs at any time. And our needs change because we get tired, we stay up too late, we get excited, we get down, we catch things, we take medications, etc. Our energies fluctuate all the time. That's not to say that when we're looking to lose weight, there aren't one or two ruling guidelines. There are, and we'll talk about them today. But it's important to think that there is no inherently good food or bad food. So with Chinese dietary therapy, you're never going to hear a good therapist tell you that this food is bad or good. I think one of the first things we need to talk about is our spleen. The spleen, as we know it in Western medicine, is a very small, little insignificant organ that we never hear about until somebody ruptures it, has it removed, and we seem to live quite happily without it. But in Chinese medicine, it is the key digestive organ. And so Chinese therapists will talk about the spleen and needing to keep the spleen healthy. The spleen has likes and dislikes, and it works in partnership with the stomach. And the stomach also has its likes and dislikes, and some of them are the same as the spleen, but really rather annoyingly, some of them are quite opposite to the needs of the spleen. So this is why we can't even adopt a diet for ourselves that we can just follow for life. We've always got to think about this a little bit like sailing on an ocean where we're tacking. We're pleasing the spleen today and the stomach tomorrow and the spleen this hour and the stomach the next hour. And this is why it's really important to understand our own energetic profile. So the things that the spleen likes dry foods. It doesn't like lots of moisture. Moisture tends to upset it and prevents it from being able to carry out its function, which in Chinese medicine is to separate good energy from the food, to feed into our system, to support everything about us, to totally nourish our health, our growth, and our energies from one minute to the next. So the spleen also likes warmth, it doesn't like cold foods, and that can be quite an unusual thought, can't it? Because in the West, and in Western nutritional therapy, we tend to think that salads and cold foods and raw foods are actually very good for us. The Chinese think the opposite. You don't get Chinese rural people eating salads. It just doesn't happen. They cook everything. So already we have a little bit of a difference between Chinese understanding of good dietetics and Western understanding of good dietetics, and we need to kind of resolve that for ourselves a little bit. But bearing in mind that there's no good and there's no bad, the stomach loves cold foods. Okay, so on another day, the stomach is going to be enjoying cold foods, and it likes moisture too. Now there is some scientific basis for this, so if I put my Western head on for a minute, I can maybe explain some of that, which is that water with our meal isn't the best thing we could do for ourselves. I don't know if you've heard this before. We always had this at school, didn't we? A big jug of water on the table, and we had to down a glass before we were allowed to leave the table. Well, what that does is it dilutes the stomach acid at exactly the time that we need it to be good and strong to help digest the food that it's just received. So we're definitely not saying that, that we don't drink, but we drink small amounts and things that actually need to be digested, things that the stomach acid needs to work on with our food. So the odd glass of wine is actually very, very good. And to drink water between meals when the stomach isn't needing to process food, and that really helps then to keep the body hydrated and to be able to produce the fluids and the digestive fluids that we need at the time that we need them. So there is a little bit of a scientific underpinning, if you look for it, for the Chinese view.
Coming up in part 2.
I'm going to talk more today about weight loss, I think, than just general health. We need to understand that when we're carrying body weight, it means that our spleen is already impaired. So what happens is we take in food and the spleen really tries to extract good energy from that food, and it can't, so it lays down body fat.
Join Elaine in part 2 where she discusses the use of the energy balance approach in weight loss.